Return of the Exiled, or Why Must I Be the Hero? By T.J. Stegaheis. Read by Yob. Dedicated to Kurt Reimert, whose stories inspired this work. Requiescat in pace. Chapter 18. To Meet Kings. Windy. Then it was time to begin their journey to Luffa and Prince Frederick. Shisa would be accompanying Windy to Luffa to continue her instruction. Commander Hewlett and some of the Saurian scouts would be also accompanying them on this leg of their journey. Little Midgie would be staying safely here in Charo. Windy gave the beautiful valley a long look to fix it in her memory before Hewlett covered her eyes, and then led them all out again. With the Saurian scouts' knowledge of the terrain and its inhabitants, the journey to Luffa was long, but without battles. A Saurian cook with 2 pack horses came along and provided many memorable meals from her stock of dried and preserved food. There would be no more boiled roots for now. She taught them all to bless their food, to honor the animals and plants that had given their lives so that others might eat. The Saurian scouts joined Windy and the men at morning weapons practice. They would sit and talk after the evening meal. All of them got to know each other even better. Sometimes they got to know themselves better. "So, you have never had to kill men in combat?" Windy asked Hewlett one night. "I cannot say that," replied Hewlett, looking away. "But it was in combat against enemies of the Saurian people, and you had no choice, right?" said Windy. "That's not quite true," answered Hewlett. "Back when I was just a young recruit, I was standing guard at the river entry one night. He was foraging for a caravan camped near the river. He believed that all Saurians wanted to kill all humans, and would not listen or relent. I was forced to kill a man who thought he was defending his people. I have never forgotten that day." Windy put her hand on his shoulder and said, "It's like that sometimes. Although the pain never goes away, you can let it settle out and make peace with the memory." It was almost exactly what Bud had told her. Hewlett turned and gave her a rueful smile. "I hope the day comes soon that humans and Saurians may be friends and nobody will have to feel this way ever again," he said. Windy could well agree. Perhaps now she could understand George a little better. Shisa introduced Windy and Tennard to the Saurian view of the stars and their movements. Windy mentioned to Tennard that Saurians did not know handedness and could use either hand equally well. Shisa added that while humans preferred either logical and militant views of the world or artistic and magical views, Saurians found this akin to preferring one eye over the other and avoided such biases. One of the scouts proved to be an able singer, and they all enjoyed hearing strange songs in the Saurian language. Commander Hewlett could recite Shursian and Bokanshiran poetry. A storyteller recited the tale of Shuk the Mighty and his mate Isha, which moved everyone, and some had tears. Other stories informed the humans on how the Saurian people came to be. Their stories of the Great War shocked and amazed everyone. They spent some nights lost in thought. A village of fishing folk, somehow allied to the Saurians, gave them passage on a large fishing boat. Once at sea, Sard grew pale and needed a healing for his illness. Windy was at first thankful that she did not have such an illness. Then when she looked at the way the horizon was moving separately from the boat and the distant land, unexpectedly Windy gave her breakfast to the fishes. A Saurian healer helped make the nausea go away. In a few hours they entered the Duat River and soon drew alongside a stone wharf. Windy looked with awe on the city of Northport. They had traveled for many moons to reach it, and it did not disappoint her. Most of the city was built of bricks and wound its way up the hills that crowded the harbor. The slopes surrounding the city were covered with orchards, and groups of colorfully clothed workers were busy gathering the autumn harvest. Most trees were still green despite the autumn chill in the air. An escort of local soldiers led them up the winding streets. All the structures she could see were ornamented and painted so that the effect was a beautiful blend of shapes and colors, leading up to the gates of a colorful wall that surrounded the crown of the main hill. Within the wall was the port guard and the town market, surrounding a paved square. They were soon all gathered in the huge square of Northport, surrounded by friendly ruffians, to be escorted to Luna City in an audience with King Thrill and Prince Frederick, who was to be her king. Wendy was still trying to orient herself in all these great events when a finger tapped her on the shoulder. When she turned around, a tall man in strange and ornate metal armor was beaming down at her through gray whiskers. She looked into his eyes and for a moment saw her mother. Then she knew that this was the great General Randon, the uncle that she had never met before. "Uncle Randon?" she asked, uncertain of how one addresses a legend. "Is it you?" "Yes, niece," he said softly. "Finally, well met, O daughter of my dear sister Irina." He took her hand and kissed it, looking for a moment at her ring. "You are Wendy, yes?" "I am Wendy, yes," she replied as he swept her up in a bear hug. "For so long I have wished I could visit my family as other men do," he said in a quiet voice. "How I have missed your mother and father. So few left, we who once were welcomed all over the kingdoms." His whiskers scratched, and there was a damp spot on her cheek, and Wendy realized that he had shed a tear for his loneliness. "I would know you better, but time is short, and we are expected." He set her down and replaced his helm. To cover the tear, she thought. He turned, and there behind him stood a score of warriors in Mountain Legion livery, openly cursed and tore, tough men sculpted by hardship and fighting. Unlike most soldiers, these wore armor of steel. It probably weighed as much as a cow, and would worth be nearly that much in silver. Few of them bore young faces. On their backs they carried the traditional axe of old Tor, something else that was unseen in the Tor Wendy had grown to know. One carried the standard of the kingdom of another carried the standard of the Mountain Legion. They waited for the man she had come to admire no less than an immortal. But he needed helpers to get up into his saddle, and Wendy realized that this legend had grown old and was not going to move mountains any more in this life. But when he turned and smiled down at her before starting his horse, she loved him no less. The procession fell in behind the horses, and she was reminded that kings were waiting at journey's end. Wendy, the innocent farm girl, was certainly only a memory now. Lady Spoven adjusted her sword and fell in line beside Hewlett. They had no sooner started than a runner dashed back to where Sard and his men were. Wendy saw another runner speaking with her uncle. Moments later, Sard, now mounted, rode up to the space beside Randon, and an intense conversation began, full of gestures and excited speech. Wendy found herself envying Sard for the attention, but could do nothing and held her place. It took nearly 3 hours to march to Luna City and the palace. She could see only a little of the palace because of the many colorful buildings crowded up to the inner walls. Once inside the walls, it took another half-hour to get everyone sorted out. A messenger with 2 burly guards came to take her parcel to Prince Frederick. Her Uncle Randon reassured her that this was proper and not to worry. It seemed an unsatisfying conclusion to her long and troublesome mission. Lady Spovin found herself in a room with 5 ladies-in-waiting, who assisted her in getting ready for her first official appearance in a royal court. She had a luxurious hot bath and had her hair dressed up. A fine dress and tiny shoes were loaned to her for the occasion. Some lacy cuffs on the sleeves helped to hide the lightning scars. A palace priest had prayed over her and rubbed an ointment on all her scars, which helped them fade somewhat. One lady was endlessly fussing over how the dress settled on her shoulders. Another lady told her that she walked like a farm boy and kept coaching her to walk with more grace. Wendy tried to work with their advice, but it was all so strange. Elderly Gina whispered many tidbits of advice and warnings to help the new noble that she might not embarrass herself. From now on, always wear the ring of your house. It displays the family honor, and you should never conceal this now that your family is once again recognized at court. I should give the ring back to my mother, Wendy said. She is the Lady Spovin. You are the Lady Spovin. This you have already proven. Gina was firm. The ladies all inspected her appearance to confirm that she was ready for court. Then they led her to a small sitting room with a fireplace and several chairs. Out of one of the chairs rose her beloved uncle, all cleaned up and dressed in finery, ready to escort her into the presence of King Luffa, to the King of Luffa, His Royal Highness Thuril. Do you know, he told her as he offered her his arm, that while he has been here all these years, it was only the year before last that anyone could get word to me that Prince Frederick was still alive. I was thinking him dead, and so when I could no longer serve Tor, I took service with King Valen of Ur. To my good fortune, King Valen and Prince Frederick have become friends, and I shall not be in a quandary over pledging my service and honor to my liege. The route to the throne room seemed like they were crossing a small kingdom. So many rooms. Wonderful wall decorations were there to delight the eye. Murals, tapestries, beautiful sconces, and other items that she had no names for. All beautiful and mysterious. I have been informed of your accomplishments as you journeyed here, Wendy, he said. You have much to be proud of, and I am deeply honored to be your escort for this first audience with His Majesty, King Thuril. King Mathurin and the Saurians speak very well of you. The gnomes do too, as far as I can be certain. They came to a gallery that opened over the entry hall, all grand and beautiful. Colorful paintings hung about, and a great chandelier hung in the open space above the entry hall, lighting up all of the wonders for her to see. I have exchanged letters with your Aunt Ariel of Tudin. She remembers getting letters from your mother back when King Leopold was on the throne, Randon went on. I hope to arrange a visit so that she may meet you and know of your family's fortunes. That armor of yours is beautiful, said Wendy. Where did you get it? On an ill-fated campaign to Chin, said her uncle without expression. We lost many good men and had to retreat back to Ur. We let the Chinnites settle their own disputes from then on. I will forever mourn the men who did not return with us. Wendy was taken aback. Her uncle, the great General Randon, had just admitted to losing a major battle. He was not invincible, as his reputation would have her believe. What else about him would she discover? Before we leave Luffa, we should pay our respects to Lord Robert of Northport, said Randon. He is a distant cousin of mine, and will wish to meet you. Uncle, asked Wendy, the gnomes say that you are knighted. Why do you not use the title? Oh, said Randon without enthusiasm. They told you of that, did they? My liege felt that it was necessary for me to have such a title in order to sit as his champion. But knights are expected to participate in tournaments and games. I have never been good at them, and I do not care to waste my time at such events. So I mention it as little as I might, and dodge the expectation. Please do not use that title, Windy, if you love me. He escorted her down a flight of stairs, elegant, broad, and graceful. They arrived at the great entry hall, just outside the throne room. The castle at Pan was tiny compared to this building. King Mathrin's palace was less than half this size. Windy wondered what kind of a man could command such a large palace. She became nervous. Then they came to a set of doors, immense, magnificent doors. Two huge men in shiny steel armor stood before them, while a smaller man in immaculate livery stood between them with a question on his face. General Randon of and Lady Windy of House Spoven, to see His Royal Highness, intoned her uncle. The man stepped through the partially open doors and announced them. The doors then opened wide in welcome. The ladies-in-waiting remained in the entry hall. Once in the throne room, they kneeled. Then her uncle stood and bowed deeply as he addressed the King and Queen of Luffa with the deepest respect. Then he bowed to an elegant, slender man at the foot of the throne, addressing him as "my liege," and to an elderly gentleman, also at the foot of the throne, as "your most gracious highness." Several more highnesses and some "your graces" were required before he was allowed to stand. At this point he said, "It gives me the greatest pleasure, my kings, my queen, my lords, my ladies, to introduce you to the Lady Spoven, my niece and the hero of the Battle of Gorvel City, friend of the Gnomish Kingdom, and honored by the Circeans of Sharrow Valley." Lady Spoven stood and curtsied low, waiting for the train of titles to finish before inserting her own. "Honor and obedience to your highnesses, my lords and my ladies. My thanks for this most gracious hospitality." Her knees complained at the unaccustomed posture of a curtsy. "Greetings and welcome, Lady Spoven," said King Thorell. "You may rise. We understand that you are only of late aware of your responsibilities as a lady of the noble courts. Beware, in these accelerated times, you may not always be allowed the privilege of ignorance. You must be a quick and agile thinker to protect your people and uphold the honor of your house. I trust that you will be up to the task?" It was abrupt and direct. Clearly, King Thorell was not going to give her any mercy for her newness. But Windy had faced great dangers, made friends with those she had feared, and walked across more than half a continent. She was no longer a weak and frightened girl. "I hear and accept the necessary burden of my station, your highness," she returned. "I am prepared to face these troubles and lead my people into conquering them." "Then you should know, Lady Spoven. Runners have informed us that the snow giants north of the Tossapan Pass are forming into an army. We believe that they now know that there is no leadership in Tor, and are preparing to invade. Your Mansard has accepted a position in the Mountain Legion, and on the advice of King Mathrin and King Teak, will lead 5,000 men from various lands in your name. Will you ride with him and represent the House Spoven in this coming battle?" "I will, and with my own sword in the lead, your highness." "Nay, lady, you must not be lost. Tor desperately needs all the leadership she can acquire. General Randon has been graciously loaned to Tor in order that his experience and reputation keep Tor's men in good morale. He has assembled 10,000 men who will fight for Tor and her king. 10,000 of our soldiers are being added to his command. It shall be his sword that leads the people of Tor in her defense and return to Tor her rightful king, a fitting return to the land of his birth. Would you not agree?" "I can think of no one better to lead the battle than my beloved uncle, although I would dearly relish fighting at his side." "As would many. That is why he shall be the hero we place at the head of the army. We can conceive of no better candidate." A chorus of agreeing voices echoed this sentiment. Lady Spoven looked at her uncle, and was at once proud and concerned. He was the great man of the kingdoms. But he had grown old, so old. Would he survive? She could not bear the thought of losing him now that she had finally met him. And when did Sard become her man? Had she not been following his commands for a whole year? So much to learn. Arundel was there, also dressed in courtly finery. Was he a lord as well? And there was Tennard, representing his college, no doubt. There was Cilio, dressed in a strange uniform, as General Cilio, she guessed. He was quiet and still. How was that possible? For now, Lady Spovin tried to remember all the instructions she had been given. Her knees shook a bit. She would rather have been fighting a score of Grolls than appear before all these important people. However, she was a lady now, and much depended on her being a good one. But confound it, she wished she was at least wearing her sword. And now, Lady Spovin, it is customary and proper for an emergent noble to swear her loyalty to her liege and future king, said King Thuriel. Windy turned to Prince Frederick and curtsied. Nay, dear lady, pronounced the king, it has been discussed and resolved before your arrival. His Highness Prince Frederick has grown old here in Luffa. His duties to us are invaluable, and his son Nicholas is quite as entitled to the throne of Tor as was his father. Nicholas shall be king. A handsome man, whose looks and bearing left no doubt as to his relationship to Prince Frederick, stepped forth and bade her approach. Windy walked slowly to him, curtsied low, and said, My liege and most respected prince, I vow my obedience and service to you as my liege and as my king. My station, service, and life are yours to command. Both Chisa and Gina had helped her with the required responses. We are most pleased to accept your service, Lady Spovin. Your reputation preceded you, and all here this day are satisfied and pleased to have you and your family once again in our service. He extended his hand. Please rise and kiss the royal ring. Windy did as he requested, and when she again stood, Windy was indeed Lady Windy of House Spovin, with the growing authority of a noble lady, recognized in 5 of the 6 lands, in service to the yet-to-be-crowned King of Tor, and committed to a battle that still loomed ahead of them all. The crier officially pronounced her amid loud applause. She was 17.